I think there's just one other point to make about drugs and oncology is we really focus on oncology cost as a cost driver for the healthcare system and total cost of care. But drugs as a percentage of oncology spend is only 20, maybe 25% of the typical.
Fixed percentage over
and
time.
It's fixed over time, and it has
flat.
not been going up. So when we look at the costs of these rising costs of the drug, if it's an expensive drug, but it cuts out the likelihood of 2 or 3 hospital days during that whole thing, it's that other 75% that was, just as we're looking at the total cost of care, how did that 20 to 25% of care, how does that affect the other?
It is remarkable to look at the data. It's a fixed percent.
Yeah,
Drug spend in oncology is a fixed percentage of the total cost of oncology over literally 30 years. I've looked at data because it shifted from the inpatient to the outpatient because of the value of the drugs, and it's still continuing to this day.
And it's really the hospitalization.
I hate to contradict you, but I've actually looked at our own data, and it's gone from 25 to 35%. And I will suggest to you,
your oncology drug spend is 35% of your total oncology bill.
Yep. And the truth of the matter is, at least as far as I'm concerned, is although Peter has that nice graph that shows the increase in cost, if you look at that as a percentage of total cost of care, it has been small. But just think about the PD-L1 drugs, PD-1, $150,000 per patient per year. That's a sticker price. That's before we got the cost plus. Or even worse, the hospital system, which is percent of bill charges, and God knows what their charge master will look like for those drugs. Okay. So now we've got a cost of an intervention that eclipses the total cost of care prior to that point. Because the annualized total cost of care is about $120,000. So it can't not go up. It's got to go up as PD-1, and they're great drugs, and I don't want to for a second suggest that patients shouldn't get them. They should. If I had second-line non-small cell lung cancer, I would want to be, in fact, I'd be at my doctor's office right now getting that drug. If I have Hodgkin's disease, because that approval is coming soon, it's dramatic in truly refractory Hodgkin's disease. It's unbelievable. There are diseases in which it doesn't seem to work so well. Colorectal cancer is not particularly active. Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma also doesn't seem, for whatever reason, not to be. So what we need to do is we need to give the right drug to the right person at the right time, and I think we're going to have to give it at the right price at some point.
Well, you raise an interesting point that you don't adjust the price on the basis of the clinical setting in which you're using the drug. It's an interesting discussion, so totally separate from this one.
Oh yeah, so
I think that's where you were going.
Who's going to be in charge of that one, right? So we don't do HTA in this country, right? We're not into health technology assessment. We pretend that.
Well, you can do it through contracting. I mean, you could have that. That's where you can have innovation in how you pay for things, but for a lot of government regulation that prevents it, quite frankly.
I'm not sure we have enough lawyers that work for us to actually manage that.
Because of a lot of rules that have been put around it, but yeah.
All right, so to round out this topic, before we move on to the final topic about the new oncology care model, when you get into this discussion for innovation, when does it begin, and who are the stakeholders who should be participating in that? I think right now it seems to be driven from pharmaceutical industry, and basically when the drugs come out, we all respond. Is there a role for the different stakeholders to be engaging earlier and talking about defining the need? Here's the need. We don't need another drug for CML. Here's what we need.
Well, they hate when I say that.
I don't necessarily agree with that. Having seen it from the drug manufacturer side, at least some of the larger companies, I think they're making more of a concerted effort to engage the payers much earlier in discussions around their pipeline and what information the payers are going to find meaningful to make coverage decisions. So I think that those discussions are happening. Quite frankly, I think in the future, what's going to be more relevant is maybe not necessarily the payers. And so what I would tell drug manufacturers is maybe you're spending too much time with the payers. I think you need to be spending more time with the consolidated delivery systems that are going to be taking capitated risk. And they don't go talk to those systems. You talk to the drug manufacturers and they say, well, we went into Kaiser and we talked to Mayo. But there's going to be a lot of consolidated systems taking capitated risks that I think are going to become much more active in steering these decisions, because if you think about it, if you're a consolidated delivery system in a local market and you own your local market, you've monopolized it by virtue of the government's graces that allowed you to create a monopoly without any intervention, those local residents change their health plans. You know what the churn is, but they don't change their geography nearly as frequently. So that health system is going to own those patients for a far longer period of time, regardless of who's insuring them. So they're going to care what those plans, what that coverage looks like. And so I think the drug manufacturers need to think about a different orientation where they're having early discussions with those entities as well.